a matter of days, Africa's biggest democracy, Nigeria, will be ushering a new administration. Now, one popularized by the slogan of renewed hope. For the new administration to succeed, it would require a vibrant legislature whose leadership must be people-centered. This is our main focus on this episode of Africa Weekly, and I am Charles Alpha, welcoming you to the program. Because of the importance of the work of the legislature to the success of any government, members of the Nigerian National Assembly elects have been reminded that oversight of other arms of government remains a critical function of the legislature. This came to the fore at the second batch of the induction retreat of the National Assembly members elect in Abuja. Joining me now in the studio is Nkem Anyata Lafia. He's a National Publicity Secretary, Parliamentary Advocacy Network, Pan-Africa. We want to say thank you very much, Mr. Nkem, for coming on Africa Weekly, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now to start with, can you help us paint a picture of the relationship that exists between the parliament and democracy in any nation?
Yes, usually for democracy to thrive in any nation, there has to be some kind of checks and balances by those who constitute or who are players or stakeholders in such democracies. And so by the thinking of those who have formulated democracy in its right stage and ideal, democracy encompasses lawmakers by way of legislators, interpreters of the law and the implementers of the law by way of the executive, and those who adjudicate over issues of divergences or disagreements within such a democracy. So in an ideal democracy, we have the three arms of government, viz. The executive, the legislature, and indeed the judiciary. Of course, by the principles of separation of powers, as enunciated mainly by a French scholar called Baron de Montesquieu, the executive is is constituted by people who, as I said before, who actually see to the day-to-day running of government, while legislature is peopled by the legislators who are lawmakers who actually make laws for the good governance of each country, and the judiciary, as I said before, coming when there are issues of conflict and all of that. And just to put it simply, in our own case, that is a presidential system of government, as distinct from parliamentarianism or what we call the Westminster type, what we have is just these three. All of these three are supposed to be independent on their own, but they coexist for the good governance, for the running of democracy itself.
Mr. Nkem, so now since the return of democratic rule in Nigeria in 1999, what would you say has been the contributions of the parliament to political development since that time?
Of course, it's all public knowledge that with the return of democracy in this fourth republic since 1999, democracy has continued to thrive because of the activities, the sacrifices, and in fact the capacities of those who have run democracy in Nigeria. Starting from President Olusegun Obasanjo, who had fought between the years of 1999 to 207, and up until the time of the late President Yaradua, who had fought for just 2 years, and finally Goodluck Jonathan, who completed the race of the 6 years, and then President Muhammadu Buhari, who will be ending a second tenure by the turn of this month, May 29th to be precise. Democracy has been one such long journey. Of course, this can be said to be an admixture of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have seen it, and we'll continue to say it. In 1999, there were cases about trying to get the legislature working, those who would be the principal officers of the legislature, the National Assembly that time. We saw how the drama that preceded the election, so to speak, or even selections of the presiding officers, where the majority of the people in, say, in the Senate then wanted a Chuba or Kadibo who was seen as vibrant, who was seen as knowledgeable, who was seen as competent, who was seen as a man who had a lot of charisma. But again, this was not in the agenda of the then president, who wanted something differently. What we have seen is that some presidents or leaders of the executive would want people who are quite amenable to the kind of decisions that they usually like. So what we have seen over these past years is a combination of what I like to call what makes Nigerian democracy quite vibrant. We've seen competition here and there. We've also seen collaboration here and there. Okay. But by and large, we must point out that there is need for the independence of each of the organs of democracy as we have it in Nigeria. Okay. And it does bear directly from the books. Each of these houses each of these organs would have to act as checks and balances to one another. Okay. And for one particular organ to lord it on another, I think in my thinking, an aberration, so to speak.
Okay, now, it is a good thing you're talking about, checks and balance, in the democratic, setting. But as Nigeria, for quite some time now, there has been a lot of tussling and jostling for power for the incoming 10th National Assembly. Now, as Nigeria counts down to the inauguration, what are you hoping, or what sort of leadership style activities are you hoping to see after May 29, or when these people are sworn in or inaugurated?
Of course, there is this particular thinking that with each coming of another executive or a legislative house, we have to be better than what we have had in the past. For the executive, there is a president-elect, there is a vice president-elect. Already, these are people who are already tested, and we know their antecedents from the places they had head forward politically. For Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president-elect, he was governor in Lagos State. And even before he was governor, he had been a member of the Senate for the 1992-93 class that ended before we had to come back in 1999 after the little interregnum that the military took over again. But for his vice president, the vice president-elect, Kashim Shettima, is also a tested hand, a banker, and a former governor of Borno State. Of course, we know his antecedents, how he handled affairs in a Borno State that was particularly in turmoil all of the years that he was governor. And even before he came, it was not an easy mix for him to come from the position of commissioner to the governor. He served out well, and he is one of those who just ended their tenure as members of the Nigerian Senate. And to that extent, you can predict what character the administration will wear. These are very strong personalities who have been able to prove their mettle.
Let's talk about your organization, shall we? Parliamentary Advocacy Network Nigeria. Can you give us an insight into your activities and how it has helped in deepening the parliamentary practice in Nigeria briefly?
Let me quickly say that I had talked about the nuances, the different colorations, the idea of leadership and who heads whatever arm of government in Nigeria is always wearing. That idea of zoning, that idea of equity, that idea of trying to ensure that no one segment or section of the country lost it on another. Nigeria is divided into 6 geopolitical zones, and much part of the things we do are actually dependent, hosted on these 6 geopolitical structures. So the Parliamentary Advocacy Network has always adjudicated and has always advocated that whatever we are going to do as a country has to take into consideration our diversity. This diversity has to come in terms of religion. This diversity has to come in terms of different geographical zones. This diversity has to even come from as a result of belief systems and all of those things, tongues, tribes. In our anthem we say, though tribes and tongues may differ, on brotherhood we stand. And what Parliamentary Advocacy Network is trying to do is to ensure that we have a country where people can look at one another without issue of suspicion, without issue of hate, without issue of divergences. If you realize that Nigerians are people who have cohabited for many years, you should know that we should be building bridges of unity rather than building walls. So what we're trying to do is the idea that Nigerians must have to, our leaders and stakeholders must have to do everything to reflect our diversity in such a way that there is inclusivity, that no sense of division has to be sustained. And so we have been, for the leadership of the country, we have gone around everywhere to all our stakeholders or to the major ones to say, look, this country has to be sustained. This country has to go past the divisions that marked the electionary period to a period where, coming from this administration, we have to have a greater harmony so as to make a better commitment to society, commitment to the country in terms of our patriotism. How do we achieve this? Okay. By making sure that every segment of this country is taken along in the decision-making process. And that has seen us say certain things like the president-elect, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is from the southwest, and his vice president is from the northeast. So other positions that have to come, very important positions, should be able to devolve to other regions, like the north central, the northwest, the southeast, and indeed the south-south.
Right, so thank you so much for your thoughts there on the role of parliament in democracy, the Nigerian 10th Assembly in focus. Mr. Nkem Anyata Lafia, the Publicity Secretary, Parliamentary Advocacy Network Pan-African. Thank you so much for finding time to talk to us on Africa Weekly.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
All right, thank you so much. Up next is the Tidbit segment. Please do stay with us. We'll take you to Ghana now, where the Strategic Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Directorates of the ECOWAS Commission held in Accra to discuss the Bloc's community strategic framework and ensure that all departments are performing in line with the strategic objectives. The community strategic framework is for the implementation of ECOWAS Vision 2050 over the next 5 years.
The 60th Ordinary Session of the Authority of Heads of State and Government, held in Abuja on December 9, 2021, adopted the ECOWAS Long-Term Vision, Vision 2050, which reflects the collective aspirations of the citizens of the community for the future, which comes under headings such as ECOWAS of the People, Peace and Prosperity for All. The finalization of the Community Strategic Framework CSF 2023 to 2027 for the implementation of Vision 2050 over the next 5 years and its alignment with the vision of the new leadership of the Commission was completed in October 2022. As a result of this process, a final version of the CSF and a document on the strategic objectives of the new management of the ECOWAS Commission called the 4x4 Strategic Objectives were released. For a better impact on development, a strategic planning and development assessment workshop was organized to ensure coherent engagements by all departments. The seminar is aligned with ECOWAS Vision 2050, the CSF and the 4x4 strategic objectives.
We're here to come up with indicators, how we measure it, who and who is involved, what are the programs and the projects that will lead to the achievement of all the priority actions being identified by the current management.
The ECOWAS resident representative for Ghana, Ambassador Baba Ghana Wakil, commended the directorates for embarking on such a critical task, which would help to make strategic planning more effective and efficient within the ECOWAS Commission.
I cannot overemphasize how important the outcome of your deliberations here would be on the attainment of our overall regional agenda, given the fact that if only we could get our energy and digital infrastructure on a sound footing, the West African sub-region will favorably compete with most of the countries in the Middle East and indeed some in Asia.
The week-long engagement is expected to highlight issues such as energy and infrastructure, digitalization plans of the Commission, monetary union, gender and social programs, and enhancing intra-community trade.
And similarly, ECOWAS has rounded off a capacity building session in Accra, Ghana for partners on protection and human security integrated coordination mechanism. It was a bold move to attempt to redefine human security developments in the sub-region.
For a long time, ECOWAS and its partners in human security have worked in close collaboration to intensify the protection of its residents' human security through the creation of conducive political, social, environmental, economic, military, and cultural systems that together give them the building blocks of survival, livelihood, and dignity. Rounding up a 3-day capacity building session for stakeholders on protection and human security integrated coordination mechanisms in Ghana's capital Accra, the director of the Regional Integration Bureau, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Madam Nima Tuziblim Adam, expressed confidence that the knowledge gained and the experiences shared during the program would strengthen participants' efforts toward protecting human security and promoting sustainable development.
Considering the severe risks faced by vulnerable and victimized populations across the region, the worsening case of child abuse, trafficking in persons, violation of international human law, gender-based violence, and human-induced conditions that inhibit populations from harmonious living continue to confront countries in increasingly complex and interconnected forms. This highlights the need for a more comprehensive approach to addressing the issues that instigate human security challenges.
The head of Trafficking in Persons Unit TIP of ECOWAS, Mr. Olayemi Olatunde, commended the participants for showing interest and fully contributing to the capacity building session.
I'm able to inform you that 4 member states have been able to access so far a small seed grant of $25,000 to help with strengthening coordination across various parts of the governmental and non-governmental architecture of member states to strengthen the response to issues of protection and human security.
Mr. Olayemi Olatunde was optimistic that the plan adopted during the discussions would be implemented to improve human security in the ECOWAS region.
And now the African Development Bank has developed the financial tools needed to make over $3 billion in compensation payment to white farmers who lost land and other assets in Zimbabwe. The bank's president, Akiwumi Adesina, while speaking during a press conference in Harare, said the new proposal would leverage capital markets to avoid aggravating Zimbabwe's debt situation.
Zimbabwe agreed in 2020 to compensate local white farmers whose land was taken by the government from 2000 onwards to resettle black families in one of the most divisive yet popular policies of the Robert Mugabe era. The expropriation triggered a barrage of Western sanctions and isolation against Zimbabwe. The southern African country's economy collapsed from the ensuing high inflation and debt. The AFDB president is co-chairing a process that aims to clear $6 billion of external debt arrears and also includes reforms to the exchange rate and the central bank, which Adesina previously said has a quasi-fiscal role that fuels inflation. Adesina said the new proposal to former white farmers would help leverage the capital markets to fund the compensation without adding debt to Zimbabwe, without providing further details.
And that's our package this week. Many thanks for being part of it. I am Charles Alpha. Thanks for watching.